Hi, this is Mr. Schneider. Today is podcast 5.4, How a Bill Becomes a Law. I thought we'd start off with that famous I'm Just a Bill song. So here you go.
They call me Bill, yes they call me Bill, and I'm standing here on Capitol. Oh!
All right, so that's obviously not the famous song, but you all know it. I'm just a bill. Okay. So let's talk about how a bill actually becomes law. So the first step is that it has to be introduced in either the House of Representatives or the Senate. So it's introduced by a senator or a member of the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to discuss the threat of ocean acidification to my region and others. I live in the most glorious part of this world. As a dad, it is a joy to share the Pacific Northwest's natural resources with my two little girls. But those natural resources don't just contribute to our recreational experiences, they contribute to our economy too. In Washington State alone, the shellfish industry contributes more than $250 million to our economy and supports more than 3,200 jobs. Our coast depends on a strong fishing industry. But all of that is threatened by ocean acidification. Last week in Tacoma, I listened to businesses and fishermen and researchers detail how we're beginning to see the effects of our changing ocean chemistry. It's impacted shellfish. We know that, but we've not yet begun to comprehend how ocean acidification disrupts our larger marine ecosystem. That's why this week I'm introducing the Ocean Acidification Innovation Act, which would encourage federal agencies to better leverage existing federal dollars by creating incentives for private sector and researchers to strengthen our ability to research, monitor, and mitigate the impacts of ocean acidification. Mr. Speaker, we need to act now. Our economy depends on it. Thank you, and I yield back.
All right, so just an example of what it's like when somebody introduces a bill in the House of Representatives. Okay. Second step. It's then sent to committees where committees work on the different bills, talking about them, discussing why they should be passed or why they should not be passed. The smaller committees determine which bills then go on forward to either the full House or the full Senate for debate.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your leadership on this, and I want to thank the members of the committee for taking up this important bill. The last NASA Reauthorization Act passed Congress was in 2010. And we have seen in the past the importance of stability and predictability in NASA and space exploration, that whenever one has a change in administration, we have seen the chaos that can be caused by the cancellation of major programs, whether it was the cancellation of the Constellation program, whether it was the cancellation of the Space Shuttle. The impact in terms of jobs lost, the impact in terms of money wasted has been significant. And
all right, so just give you an example of what happens when it goes to committee. The different members of the committee sit there, they talk about, they discuss the bill, why it's important, why it's not important. After going to committee, it's then, if the bill passes through the committee, it's then debated on the floor, where members of the House and Senate discuss why a bill should go forward, or why it should be voted on, why it shouldn't be voted on, why it should be passed, why it shouldn't be passed.
Among Republicans is that if you cut taxes, particularly on the wealthiest people in America, the economy will prosper. We hear that over and over again. Didn't we try that experiment under President George W. Bush? Didn't the debt of the United States double under the president and he left a shambles behind him? 2.3 million jobs lost in the first 3 months of President Obama's administration because of this failed economic policy, which you continue to espouse, that if we cut taxes on the rich, America is going to get wealthier. Haven't we tried it? Where are the jobs?
Could I take a little trip down memory lane with my friend from Illinois, who I had the great privilege many years ago, I don't know if I should mention, 1982 election, he and I came to the House of Representatives together. And you might recall that one of his own, then a Democrat congressman from Texas, got together with President Reagan, and guess what we did? We cut taxes, and guess what? We had one of the strongest recoveries in recent history of this country. Because, could I just say, finally enough, because we didn't start spending and add spending without paying for them. And I would say the senator from Illinois, he is correct. The spending that went on in the previous administration was not acceptable. And
All right, so this is an example of senators politely discussing, debating something going on, a bill going on in the Senate. So after it's debated on, it's then voted on in each house. So the Senate, so we just saw the Senate debating. After they debated this bill, they would then go vote on this bill. This is actually a vote from the House of Representatives.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 175, H.R. 3590, signed by 18 senators.
Sorry, this is Office of the Senate. I misspoke. Sorry.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call is waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 3590, the Service Members Home Ownership Tax Act of 2009, shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.
No.
Mr. Barrasso.
No.
Mr. Balkus. Mr. Bott. Mr. Bai. Mr. Bekich. Mr. Bennett of Colorado. Mr. Bennett of Utah. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Bond.
All right, so you can see the senator is voting A or no on the bills, and they have to they do that when they. Not all of them are voice votes. Some of them are just not all of them where they have to say yes or no. I vote this way, but this is an example of a bill where they did stand up and say yes or no on each bill. All right, so after it's voted on, if it's passed, it then goes to the other house to repeat the process. I'm not going to show you more videos because it's pretty much the same thing. All right, so this is pictures of the House of Representatives. If it passes the House and Senate, it's then sent to the President. The President then has the decision of whether or not he wants to sign it or veto it. If a bill is vetoed, the President vetoes a bill, it can be sent back to the Congress. A presidential veto can be overridden with a 2/3 vote in both the Senate and the House. President Obama had a bill vetoed the last couple months of his presidency, dealing with 9/11 and the victims' ability to sue Saudi Arabia, which I talked about in a previous podcast. Here's President Trump signing a bill.
He's going to be terrific, and he's going to get approved, but I'll give you a different one. Come here. I'll give you a lane. You want a lane? Okay. No, Tom is not insulted.
Mr. President, the leader wants it.
You know what? The leader should have a lane. That's a good idea.
All right, so first bill was very jovial. Everybody's happy. I wonder if it'll be like that in the next couple of months. All right, so that's how a bill becomes a law. This podcast 5.4, this is the last podcast for this unit. We'll talk about tests, quizzes, stuff like that. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.